President Donald Trump refueling trade tensions, threatening to impose a 50% tariff on goods from the EU, as well as 25% tariffs on Apple's iPhones. The levies on the EU would take effect on June 1st. Trump saying in a post on Truth Social that talks are going nowhere. And joining us now, we've got Shai Akabas, who is the Director of Economic Policy at Bipartisan Policy Center. Good to have you here with us. Just take us into your read-in now on the latest on some of the trade policy and I guess strategic chaos as it's been talked about by some of the administration members.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. What we've seen in the tariff policy over the last several months has been really driving the uncertainty in the economy, and from a business standpoint, from a consumer standpoint, and it's very understandable that there are goals that these tariffs, that we have with these tariffs, that we are trying to renegotiate trade deals that have been in place for many years, get more fair trading relationships. We understand the administration's goals to bring back some of the manufacturing to the United States. Those can be accomplished in a variety of ways, but when we are seeing these fluctuations in tariff policy, it makes it impossible for small businesses especially to plan how they're going to conduct their business. It makes it very difficult for consumers who hear that inflation might be coming and making big purchasing decisions around that. So I think it will be important for some of this uncertainty to settle down over time if we're going to see the strong, robust economic growth that we all want to.
Is that uncertainty going to settle down anytime soon in your view?
Well, it depends on what the administration's policy is. We've seen tariff rates go up and then they come back down, and then tariffs get put back on, and then they taken off. And that is really challenging for fostering growth in the economy. It'll really be up to the administration and the negotiations that they are undertaking right now with many countries across the world, and we'll have to see what those tariff rates end up at. We are right now at 10% across the board and higher on China, Canada, and Mexico, and then there are these potential additions that you just mentioned at the top. If those all go up, then I think we're in for a difficult second half of the year for the economy. If we settle into a more natural state of equilibrium, even if that includes some tariffs, I think people will feel more confident about planning for the future.
I thought the tariffs were supposed to offer the tax cut.
So this is another challenge, which is that we've heard competing visions and goals for what the purposes of these tariffs are. The president has said that he wants to bring in a massive amount of revenue from the tariffs. We've seen a little bit of revenue come in. We have a tracker that shows that tariffs are coming in at higher rates than they were in previous years, but nothing that's going to materially change our fiscal challenge. And that is at odds with the purpose of the tariffs to incentivize renegotiations of the trading relationships that will result in more free trade. Because, of course, if we get freer trade and tariff rates come back down, they're not going to bring in that revenue that's being discussed. So we'll have to see where those two competing priorities leave us. But I think the bottom line for the fiscal situation, which is getting quite dire in this country, is it's unlikely that tariffs are going to play a major role in getting us out of the situation that we've gotten ourselves into.
Talk about Europe then, because I'm curious what this tariff rate on the EU that the president proposed this morning does to the U.S. economy, to the U.S. consumer, if it were to stay in the place the president is proposing it at the moment.
Well, rates that are along the lines of 50% or 145% or things like that, those are just unsustainable for the type of business relationships that we have with many of these countries, or for the relationships that our businesses rely on. We've really never experienced policy like that, so it's even difficult to predict exactly what that will mean for the economy. But domestically, consumers right now are really going through a period where we've been through a bout of high inflation. Many families are still struggling to make ends meet, and it's very unclear what this is going to look like for the second half of the year. That's true for businesses as well. What's making things worse is that we have an unsustainable fiscal situation that is leading to very challenging dynamics in the bond markets, where we're having to pay higher interest rates to service our debts. Yeah. And that ultimately is leading to higher interest rates across the economy and feeding the inflation that we've seen in past years and that we might continue to see from the tariff dynamic that's going on. So all of these factors are really causing a lot of economic uncertainty and strife.
Another piece of economic uncertainty that's unfolding in terms of the policy right now is on immigration. We have the president calling for international students at Harvard to transfer. I'm curious from your perspective about how big a risk you think the president's immigration policy could be to the economy longer term.
So immigration is a key factor in our economic growth. We, of course, have been the place that is most desirable for immigrants to go in the world, and we rely on their talents to accelerate our economic growth, to create innovation in our economy, and that ultimately benefits all Americans. What's important in immigration policy is to make sure that we don't cut that off. There are certainly a variety of goals. We need to make sure that, of course, we have secure borders and people are getting into this country in a fashion that is legal. But at the same time, if we choke off that immigration funnel, it's going to ultimately mean fewer people who are contributing to the American economy, slower economic growth, and that's not what any American should want. So we need to find a balance on policy that can achieve both of those goals simultaneously. We'll have to see where this ultimately ends up between the enforcement side and the immigration policy side of how we make sure that there's a pipeline of immigrants coming to the country, but it is a really critical factor both for our workforce and for the research and innovation that goes on in our economy.
Shai, thank you so much. Appreciate it.